let's talk reasonable compensation. If you run a US tax firm, you have to navigate this in a bunch of different scenarios. The biggest probably being your S-Corp clients, right? And the way that most firms calculate reasonable comp, it is like the partner has some arbitrary mental calculation they do based on the profitability of the business and a couple tidbits they picked up from a continuing ed course like 15 years ago. But that's sorcery. The lack of specificity around how the boss determined the number, there's no way to scale that. And it actually blocks the rest of your team because whatever that sorcery or decision-making authority is, your team doesn't have it. Enter RC Reports, the sponsor of this week's demo day, a turnkey way to calculate reasonable compensation and generate a report that pulls in the best literature and court cases we have to dictate how we get to this number, along with like real wage data. And they're gonna have you calculate reasonable comp one of three ways. First, the cost approach, also called the many hats approach. Second, the market approach or industry comparison. Third, the income approach, which a lot of people are using incorrectly. Now, for each of those methods, you can actually swipe these sample reports if you want to take a look at them. Here's the sample for the income approach, which you may not be aware should only be applied if the fair market value of the company is available each year, which means that spitball that the partner does.
They made $100,000 this year. What do you think, Kevin?
70? 60.
Come on, this is Steve. Let's do 30.
Okay, and just for the file, how did you calculate that?
It's called experience, Timmy. 20 years of it.
Of course, yes. Okay.
20 years, Timmy!
Good luck defending that, right? Now, for most SMB owners, you're gonna wanna use the first one, the cost approach. And I will show you just how easy it is to run a report. Inside the platform now, hop into clients, select Matilda here, create a new report, hit next. We'll use tax compliance for S-Corps because reasonable comp comes up in more places than just your S-Corps. We're going cost approach. You'll see some tool tips to the right here to help you decide which is the right one to use in each case. Also over in resources, you're gonna get a whole bunch more stuff if you wanna go deeper here. Next, we'll select the tax year. I can then push the questionnaire to the client, but in this case, I'm just gonna do it myself to show you how easy it is. I'd say this takes like maybe 10 minutes for you and or your client to complete. Honestly, if you were doing a bunch of them, you could machine through them way faster than that. But first step is to set the time and location. 0 to 40 hours, but just wait 1 minute there, Scooter. Why is this capped at 40 hours? Nerd alert. In 2014, there was a case involving a guy that worked like 12 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. And both the courts and the IRS expert used 40-hour weeks or 2080 hours a year to calculate reasonable comp. I don't know, but it's the guidance that we got. The more you know. Except you didn't know because you were too busy making up your own way to do it. So you slide this little guy to however many hours they worked, probably 40. Set your location or where you predominantly work. Step 2 is identifying the tasks that the owner does. So under admin, for example, bunch of admin tasks here. But let's just say they're the office clerk. I'm gonna motor through the rest of these. So those are all general tasks. But for step 4, we add business specific tasks. Matilda owns a coffee shop. That's also a bookstore. You know, one of those where they hook you with the free smells. They get you to sit there reading books and buy lots of coffee. Known in the retail scene as a classic stop, shop, and plop. So I'll type in barista, select that one, but also book. And you'll see all the book-related tasks here. They're selling used books. So I'll say repairer and sorter. Now, 4th step involves setting the amount of time she spends on each. And it's really the percentage that matters here, since the hours won't always line up if they work over 40. I'll motor through the rest of these. And then you're gonna set the proficiency for each of these tasks. And this does impact the calculation. So as far as her office clerk skills, we're gonna say she's below average. But as a barista, very good. Also above average book repairer. Now last step, number 5 here is just reviewing everything that you've already put in. Now if I close this out and come back to the client screen, I can see our report in draft status. I'm just gonna finalize it. It arrived at a $41,000 reasonable comp figure. Let's take a look at the PDF. It's breaking down time and comp with a whole bunch of detail on the following pages for all of those tasks that we just identified. It's calculating hourly wages for each of those according to real wage data. But also if you scroll down, it's giving a bunch of context about how it was calculated, the methodology, which is helpful for you and your team, but also for your client. Because let's be real, if most tax pros don't know how to calculate reasonable comp correctly, you better believe that your clients are confused. And this deliverable, like actually having something to show your work, goes a long ways towards increasing the perceived value of what you're doing for your client. It's a whole lot more impressive than an email or never even telling them the work that went into figuring out a reasonable comp figure. Now, even better, this stuff is branded for your firm, and the questionnaire, if you put that in front of your client, the whole process looks super clean, right? Now, before we sign off, I always want to touch on pricing on these. Always subject to change, but at the time that we're doing this video, a one-off report is $500. At 10 reports, you're paying about $150 per report. And at 20 reports and beyond per year, which is where most of you will be, you're paying $100 or less per report, which if you do the math, is more than we were paying when you were just shooting from the hip. But as we try to position our firms more around tax advisory, not just around doing tax returns, being more than just a tax return mill, because that advisory work is like 2 to 5x as profitable, we need to build our services and those packages through the lens of advisory. So I can show the client, this is the money that you're saving every year by being an S-Corp, but it also means we got some extra admin, right? You're on payroll now, and you're confused by that. We review your reasonable compensation every single year. Maybe you've got like a template they use for their annual meeting minutes. Good one. Reasonable comp is like an essential part of that ongoing compliance, just the hygiene that comes with that S-Corp. If a small biz rocks up to RC reports for a reasonable comp study, it's gonna cost them $500. But pop quiz time, how much should a study cost with your expertise in the loop? The answer? More than $500. So if you're paying RC Reports $99 for that study you just generated in 15 minutes, you're making good money on this. And the beauty here is that anybody in your team can put these reports together. It is not blocked by you and whatever reasonable comp sorcery you use. And that's a big win. RC Reports, check out the link down in the video description, and thanks to them for sponsoring this video. And before you go, I just made a playlist of cool tech for tax firms. That is US tax firms. Check that one out. Past demo days of tax tech, stuff that actually makes it way easier to do profitable advisory work rather than just slamming numbers into your stanky old tax software that will never be automated. Don't even get me